So it looks like the ECB is sticking to its game plan. And so how soon can we expect another rate hike? Well, Ciaran O'Hagan is a fixed income strategist and head of European rate strategy at Societe Generale. He joins me live now from Paris. Thanks so much for speaking to us. So just hearing from, good morning to you. Just hearing there from Jens Weidmann speaking out for the first time since taking the helm at the Bundesbank. From what he's said already, does it seem as though he will take a harder line on inflation than his predecessor, Axel Weber?
I think he'll take a line as hard as Axel Weber. Axel Weber himself took a relatively hawkish line compared to other members of the Council. I think that the ECB is set for hiking rates in June and again later this year. Nothing seems likely to upset that unless there's a big economic shock, but the hawkish discourse will continue.
What are the risks, though, of fighting inflation too hard, of the hawkish discourse, as you describe it, raising rates too quickly?
Well, they're raising rates from very low levels at a very gradual and predictable pace to levels that are not unreasonably high. They're in for a series of rate hikes, a rate hike cycle, with rates heading towards 2.5% by the end of next year. So it's not an abrupt large change, and I think that the European economy can probably handle it.
But given that it's not an abrupt change, as you say, they're starting from a low level, they're not going to be too aggressive. Can we then conclude that this policy is necessarily going to be effective in bringing inflation under control?
Well, inflation is determined by a broader set of concerns, including, of course, commodity prices, over which the ECB doesn't have much control. I think that this is preventive medicine and is somewhat rebalancing policy as opposed to the very relaxed fiscal policy that we have. What happens on the fiscal side is also very important, and hopefully we're going to see more fiscal austerity in the year to come, which will alleviate the need for even more aggressive rate hikes.
But won't greater fiscal austerity also mean that the rate hikes we do see, no matter how gradual, could harm the more vulnerable countries, Spain, Portugal, Ireland, Greece?
Well, I think there's no escaping the fact that several countries, indeed the West as a whole, is living beyond its means. And unfortunately, if we're going to have more balanced growth, we need to engage in painful decisions which are going to effectively hurt growth. We can't all the time live well beyond our means. Tough decisions need to be taken at some stage by some institutions.
Is part of the problem right now within the Eurozone, though, is that you don't have a one-size-fits-all situation. I mean, yes, you've got the ECB setting rates for a number of different countries, some people say a three-speed Europe, you know, Germany, Italy. We're even seeing distinctions being made between the vulnerable countries themselves. Well,
effectively, you do need some coherence, some cooperation in terms of policy. And when you've got at one end of the extreme, for example, Ireland with a budget deficit, it just revised upwards its budget deficit goal for this year to 10% of GDP. When you've got Ireland at that kind of level and Germany more down towards 3%, we do have a problem. But the response is for those countries with very large budget deficits to get them down in line with what was agreed at Maastricht.
Okay, well, great to get your thoughts.
If we want stability, that is the way we have to go.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Ciaran O'Hagan.